Hello and welcome back to my channel. In light of the Valentine's Day holiday, we're going to be discussing the 2001 film Two Can Play That Game. And I'm sorry if I sound nasally and sick. It's because I'm nasally and sick. I've been sick this whole week. It's been terrible, but I'm so glad to be here. So starting off, we have Shantae Smith. She's an it girl. Okay, she's successful in her career as a senior ad executive. When she's not girl bossing in the office, she's a relationship guru. She even acts as a guide for her friends whenever they're having relationship problems. We get to meet her friends. Starting off, we have Karen. We meet Karen and she's not in such a great state because she's having relationship problems. And Karen is an executive for an engineering firm and she was head over heels for this guy, Michael. We get to see how Karen and Michael met. And when Karen met Michael, he was, okay, Karen pays to have Michael's teeth fixed and she gives him an overall makeover. He proposes to her, but then backpedals once he realizes that he's had this glow up. Their engagement has been fully stopped. Like, it's a full pause right now. When we meet Karen, she's definitely emotionally strung up on Michael, and so that's where she is. And then we have Tracy. Her boyfriend cheats on her all the time. Like, there's no other, her boyfriend cheats on her. That's like their thing. Then we have Deidre. Her boyfriend doesn't have a job and he's financially dependent on her. We get to meet Keith, who is Shantae's boyfriend. He's a successful attorney, and them together, they're like a super dope power couple. When we first meet him, Shantae does a little drive-by. They have sex in his office. I didn't know any other way to put it. I didn't know any other way to approach that, but that's how we meet Keith. And Keith is good to her, he's successful, and overall, he's a good man, Savannah. When Shantae is leaving her rendezvous with Keith, she runs into Connie Spaulding, VP of Marketing and a bona fide hoe. So Connie has a particular reputation for taking men. It's even speculated at some point that she got her current job position, her current job title, for sleeping with the boss. It seems that Connie shares a professional relationship with Shantae and Keith. Like I said, as Shantae is leaving, Connie is going up to go meet with Keith. And despite Connie's reputation, Shantae is unbothered because she trusts Keith. And I know that we're not supposed to like Connie, but this intro that we get of her, this outfit, the ponytail, oh my God, yes. So from there, Shantae goes and picks up her friend Tracy. That's the one whose boyfriend is always cheating on her. And Tracy is currently crashing out on her boyfriend. She's in his apartment, fucking all his shit up. Just damage, okay? Just the damage of property all over the place. And this is where Shantae gives the audience a little bit of insight, a little bit of cheating 101. It says at one point, if you want to know if your man is cheating, you get a pair of underwear that's either too big or too small, and you whip it out and you ask him, whose underwear are these? And then you basically wait and see his response. That's why Tracy is currently crashing out, because she just did this experiment on him and he lies about where the underwear came from. And so she's like, okay, you're cheating. Because otherwise, if he told the truth and was like, I have no fucking clue how those underwear got here, you know, then he would have told the truth. But it's like, if he's lying, he's probably like, oh shit, whoever was over here last forgot their underwear. I don't know, okay? I don't make up the rules, Shantae does. Shantae also tells us the most common lie for cheating. Your significant other says that they're gonna be working late. So keep this in mind, okay? Shantae and her friends are all gathered around. They're drinking, they're chilling. So the girls are all supposed to be going to dinner. Shantae cannot attend dinner with them though, because she has a planned dinner with Keith. So they're kikiing, they're talking about men, talking about how Keith treats Shantae like a queen and how he's just like a real nice dude and everything. They're dancing in Shantae's living room. They're drinking their wine. They're just vibing, having a good time, until Keith calls to cancel his dinner with Shantae. You guess why? Because he has to work late. Now, I want to recall back maybe a minute and 30 seconds ago, Shantae also tells us the most common lie for cheating. Your significant other says that they're going to be working late. Because Keith has canceled dinner with Shantae, her schedule has now opened up, so she ends up joining her girls for dinner. So Karen and Tracy are talking about how Shantae has the 411 on men and how she knows men and how they're always going to her for dating advice because she always knows what to do and the right thing to say. Just as Shantae is receiving all of this praise, Tracy looks behind Shantae and sees Keith on the dance floor with another woman. Of course, Karen brings this to Shantae's attention and is like, hey, wasn't he supposed to be working late? And he's not working late. He's dancing with another woman. I swear to God, this has never not happened to me, where you post a guy on social media, like you hard launch the relationship, or you finally feel safe in the relationship, and then some bullshit like this happens. It never fails. I don't know if they sense it and they're like, I'm gonna start acting up. This bitch is a little too comfortable. I don't like that. Shantae is holding it together and she's like, like, let me go say hey. And the ladies are like, hey, like, what? So Shantae is bullshitting her friends. She goes to the bathroom and she has a mini crash out. And she's obviously very upset because Keith has lied. And not only has he lied, but now he's out with another woman. Very suspicious shit going on. Okay, so Shantae goes from a mini crash out, Jekyll and hides, and then is now composed, and now the games have begun. And we're introduced to rule number 1, which is basically to stay calm, look completely unbothered, and approach the issue head on. So she confronts Keith, and when she confronts Keith, it's very chill. Shantae is just like, oh, hey, like, it's nice seeing you. And she even compliments the girl that he's out with, and Keith looks stunned. He looks shocked. He looks like a deer in headlights. As soon as Shantae walks off, he tells old girl, he's like, we need to go. And she's like, we haven't even eaten yet. He's like, I don't care. We need to get the hell out of here. So he leaves without saying a word. Very guilty response, if you ask me. I don't know. Shantae goes back to the table and continues to pretend that everything's fine. She downplays the whole thing with her friends. And she's like, if you don't have trust, what do you have? And so her friends are really impressed. They're like, oh my God, you're so mature. And wow, I respect you so much for that. And then we're introduced to rule number 2, which is never tell your friends the full situation. And she says this because she says that it'll ruin your confidence and they're just going to give you bad advice. And so she just doesn't tell her friends. And I have mixed feelings about that because I'm like, damn, if you can't crash out in front of your friends, who can you crash out in front of? So as soon as Shantae gets home, she executes what she calls the 10-day program. 10-day program is intended to get your man back and to get him back behaved. Right around here is where Shantae loses me. Like, I can definitely see myself being calm in a situation like that. And before you commend me for being mature and not crashing out, I'll have you know, before my frontal lobe developed, I was the crash out queen. I was a different young lady. Before I went as MalliPeace, I went by Malli with the peace. Piece. And truth be told, there's a small part of me that wishes like a motherfucker would take me to the point of crashing out just to see if I still got it. But I digress. My point is, there would not have been a 10-day program because I would have left Keith. And I know that seems probably a little dramatic, but just follow my thought process here, okay? One, I guess it depends on what the individual considers cheating. There were no telltale signs that there were any problems in the relationship. Like, hell, the same day that Keith pulled this shit, he literally said, there's nothing anybody can say that would make me leave that woman. He's like oogling her picture. He has a framed picture of her on his desk that he looked at and was like blushing at. And the same day, he does this shit, huh? Like, that would mess me up so bad because I'm like, if this is him while the relationship is good and it's top tier, I don't even want to imagine him if something were to go awry or if they would have a dispute or anything, So for me, that is where I would feel a bunch of uncertainty. I think it would just make me feel very uncertain about the relationship, and it would make me question whenever we're happy and we're doing good. It would make me question anytime we're not doing so good, because I am similar to Shantae. I put 100% trust and faith in my partner until I'm proven otherwise. I don't go through phones, okay? I don't do any tracking or tracing of any kind. It just feels like so much effort. And I feel like if I had to do that, I probably shouldn't be in that situation. And I feel like after this, I would be paranoid in that way. Now, anytime he says he's gonna work late, I'm gonna look at him crazy and be like, do you gotta work late? Or are you gonna be out dancing with other bitches? And don't get me wrong, every relationship has trials and tribulations, and at some point or another, you are gonna disappoint your partner is going to disappoint you, and y'all are gonna have to work together to figure that shit out. It's just, for me, and call it a trauma response, I don't care. Any situation where infidelity is involved, potential, attempted, successful, it's just a no-go for me. So anyways, Keith confides in his best friend and colleague, Tony. So as Keith is confiding in Tony, Keith is claiming innocence, and he's talking about how he wasn't even gonna do anything with the girl and that it was just innocent. And Tony puts it in a perspective for him where Keith acknowledges that he is attracted to the girl and he was lusting for the girl that he was out with, dancing with, which it's like, it's good that he does have a friend that holds him accountable in situations like that. I do do think it's normal to have physical attraction to other people outside of your relationship, but I feel like acting on it, you'll be a dead son of a bitch, I tell you that. Canceling dinner with your girlfriend, lying and saying you have to work late. Bitch, I hope the fuck you do. It's a bit much. I feel like that's a bit much. So we're on day 1 of the 10-day program. Shantae fully and accurately anticipates Keith's steps and how he's gonna respond during these 10 days. However, she does not predict Tony coaching Keith through the whole 10 days. So day 1, she anticipates a call from him. He calls, and Tony, like I said, is there coaching him. And Tony advises Keith to take the conversation really slow to kind of get a feel for how Shantae is feeling about the situation, because that's really awkward, which I almost wish he would have addressed it head on, because it's very obvious that he was guilty. So obviously there's something that needs to be addressed, but he's taking his time. Shantae knows that he's taking his time, rushes him off the phone, and tells him that they're going to meet for dinner to discuss. So we're at the dinner. Shantae intentionally arrives 15 minutes late so that Keith will be anxious. Keith admits his guilt and kind of explains that he was working late, and we find out the girl's name is Julie. It's a coworker of his, and Julie invited him out to dinner, so he went, which is like, y'all were dancing. Y'all weren't even sitting down eating food. Like, I don't understand. I don't get it. I don't get it. I would have left. And in response, Shantae, quote, gut punches that ass and breaks up with him. And then we're introduced to rule number 3. Break up with him before he breaks up with you. Which, that sounds so childish, because what? I would have broken up with him too, and it kind of explained how this kind of puts a damper on the relationship and my trust within the relationship, and I would want to take a step back and kind of process that. And the gag is that Shantae has decided the situation isn't that bad and that she doesn't want to break up with Keith, but she doesn't tell him this because she wants to teach him a lesson. I wouldn't say it if I didn't mean it. You know what I mean? But she says it. She doesn't really mean it. But it's a part of the 10-day program, so we're just going to go with it. So we're on day 2 and 3 of the program. Keith is struggling really bad. He's torn up. He's in the house pacing back and forth. He's low-key crashing out a bit. And he's just sad without Shantae. And Shantae is vibing. She's hanging out with her friends. She's going to church. And while she's at church, she finds a male member of the church and deliberately hugs on him a little too long and a little bit too flirty in front of one of Keith's friends, so it gets back to him. It can go and tell him, hey, we seen Shantae hugging up on another dude at the church. This does generate the response Shantae is looking for, because now Keith is working overtime, blowing up her phone, calling, leaving messages back to back. And like I said before, she is anticipating everything that he'll do on these days, and he's doing it until we get to day 4. So day 4, Keith is still all messed up. He literally doesn't even go to work. Like, he's home sad. It's just sad. It's just sad seeing him sad, all chocolatey brown and shit, just sad as shit. And I'm like, if only you didn't go dance it out with another bitch. So Shantae gets home from work. She has hella missed calls from Keith, and just as she's about to settle down and go to bed, guess who pulls up? It's Keith. Keith pulls up, luscious and lickety, and his intention is to seduce Shantae, but that doesn't work. So he results in what they kept calling as the transference of energy. Basically, he started a random argument with her. I have no clue what the argument was about, but he starts a random argument with her and puts her in a very shitty headspace, basically. It's like he almost had me in the first half, because have you ever, like, maybe you got in an argument with your dude and you don't answer his calls or his texts all day, and then he pulls up? But we don't do that anymore now that our frontal lobe is developed, because we're adults and we don't play games and we don't encourage toxic behavior. We're coming off of day 4. We're now on day 5, and Keith is feeling really good with himself because of the transference of emotion shit that happened the day prior, and Shantae is not feeling good because of the whole transference of emotion shit that happened the day prior. Now we're on to day 6. Shantae is feeling a little down and out, and so she decides to go on dates. She at this point suspects that Keith will be out partying and stuff, and she isn't wrong. Keith and Tony are out. They're out dancing, and guess who Keith is getting buck wild with on the dance floor? Yes, that's right. Connie Spalding, VP of Marketing, bona fide hoe. And Connie is laying it on thick. She's real touchy-feely on the dance floor. This makes Keith feel uncomfortable. Like, at some point, he has to back away from her, and he has, like, a side conversation with Tony, and he's really just not feeling it. But Tony tells him if he plans on getting over Shantae, that he needs to start dating other people. Now, we're on day 7, and on this day, Shantae has every intention of switching the power roles back. You know, she was down and out days 5 and 6 because of the transference of emotion bullshit that was going on. So now she has to, like, switch it up and get ahead of the game. Shantae picks up some lingerie, she gets her nails done, hair done, everything did. She gets a sexy dress and makes an unannounced trip to Keith's house. And she's there to drop off some stuff. And the whole plan is for her to get invited in, make out with him, get him all hot and bothered. And just as things are beginning to escalate, she leaves. This was her way of turning the tables. So now we're on to day 8. And at this point, Keith has told Tony about Shantae's surprise visit, and Tony kind of lectures him like, you'd never let a woman in your house unannounced, and now she has the power. And at this point, Keith is over it. He's like, I want my relationship back. He's like, I'm gonna call her, we're gonna make up, and I'm gonna be over this. And so Tony encourages him not to, and by now Connie Spaulding, VP of marketing, bona fide hoe, has invited Keith to, it's like a marketing event. And it just so happens that Shantae also has to go to this marketing event for her job. And like I said before, Keith, Connie, and Shantae all run in the same circles with their jobs. Like they interact with each other within their career. So it's day 9. We're at the party. Shantae has invited her friends. And I have to say, this is a really nice party. This looks like the type of party that I'd be down with. It looks like a complete vibe. So Shantae is talking with her boss, and in walks Keith, and he's armed, like he's linked up with Connie. He doesn't even address Shantae. And Connie just casually is like, oh, hey girl. And mind you, earlier in the movie, Shantae and Connie run into each other, and you would think that they were like real cool friends. They are not cool friends, because now she's there with her man. And so at this point, Shantae is shook because she wasn't expecting this, because we're on day 9. They're supposed to be like literally she was preparing for them to make up, and she was like, make sure you buy a bunch of groceries because y'all are gonna be inside after y'all make up. Like, she's fully prepared to make up, but this has thrown a whole wrench in the situation. So Shantae confronts Keith, which couldn't be me, could not be me. I don't give a fuck what program there was. I don't care. If I was hypothetically in this 10-day program and I seen that, I would have been like, Keith tells her that he knows he's a good man and he's tired of her bullshit. And he literally hands Shantae his drink and walks off with Connie. And then following that up, Shantae confronts Connie. So she asks Connie, she's like, why are you here with Keith? Like, you know that's my man. And oh my God, does Connie check her? I'm like, I'm so uncomfortable for Shantae at this point, because I was like, okay, confronting Keith is one thing in itself, but confronting Connie, I really feel like there shouldn't have been any expectation of any loyalty from Connie to Shantae, especially because Shantae acknowledges the kind of woman that Connie is. And really, I found it upsetting that she confronted Connie, because I was like, girl, stand up. Like, you already confronted Keith, and you know what kind of woman Connie is. And like, she was giving too much. You know, it couldn't be me. Like, that was very bold of Connie. I just feel like that is too much of a messy situation. If I was in a situation like that, I don't care how fine the dude is. I don't care how successful the dude is. That seems like a messy situation to be in, because she has a professional relationship with both Shantae and Keith. So in my mind, I wouldn't even want to touch on that. And it's been, what are they? They're on day 9. So it's been less than a couple of weeks I wouldn't have jumped on that at all. That seems like a very awkward situation. But I mean, to each their own. Couldn't be me, but to each their own. You like it, I love it. Although I do believe that Shantae's program, manipulative as it is, would have worked in her favor if Tony didn't get involved. And I do feel like Tony's involvement was kind of a necessary evil. But just watching everything played out frustrates the ever-living shit out of me. Pisses me off real bad. This next scene that we're about to discuss, oh my God. Every time I watch it, I'm like, I just get so frustrated. So Keith and Connie are dancing very provocatively on the dance floor. And that's one thing in itself. You know what I mean? Shantae has made her bed with this situation. He's now playing back in the game. I can't get mad at that. What's pissing me off more than anything is her friends gawking at them while they're dancing. I don't blame them for being surprised. Because Shantae definitely, rule number 2, don't tell your girlfriends the full situation. Up until this point, they think that Shantae and Keith are still doing fine. So as far as they're concerned, Shantae's boyfriend is dancing, is being disrespectful. But little do they know, we know that they're technically broken up at this time. So it's like, I get their response, but God, I wanted them to be nonchalant and chill about it. Because like I said, I would not be participating in this 10-day program. But now that we're here, so like Shantae, Connie is there for work. So at some point she has to leave the dance floor. But before she leaves the dance floor, she asks like the ladies, they're like entertainment / waitresses. And she asked them if they could keep Keith company while she's gone. So it's like a bunch of women dancing around him. Keith invites Tony over. So now Keith and Tony are dancing surrounded by a plethora of women. And so at this point, Shantae has walked up to her friends, and her friends are like, girl, what the fuck is going on? I can see now why she had that rule in place to begin with, because I don't know, watching them freak out was making me anxious. And I don't know if it was how the scene was moving, but like her friends, all of them were like jumping down her throat, and they're like, what are you gonna do? I would be crying right now. You want us to beat him up? All of this conversation happening at once, and it just makes you feel like, I felt anxious for Shantae. And you know what though? I would say that those are decent friends, because have you ever been in like a shit situation and there's a friend that looks a little bit too happy that you're in a shit situation? The sincerity of them feeling the need to defend her, feeling sad for her, and you know, feeling upset about it because, you know, that's their friend. I can understand Shantae wanting to keep up appearances for her friends, but it's the fact, like I said, they seem very genuine in their concern for her and her relationship, where I would have felt, those are friends that I would have felt comfortable being like, hey, this is what's going on and this is what it is. So now they're all staring at Keith, Shantae included, and that is, of course, the reaction that Keith wanted. He wanted to get a rise out of Shantae. So in response, Shantae goes outside and slashes her own tire. She does this to pick up a man to take back inside. So it's like multiple people have stopped by asking if she needs help, and basically other people that stop by, she picks up Calvin. So she takes Calvin inside, gets him a drink, and is basically kikiing with him the whole time. Keith sees Shantae with Calvin and starts to become more and more concerned. He confronts her and is like, are you trying to make me jealous? She denies this and says that she doesn't play any games. But we know Shantae. It's all a part of the fucking game. Keith is very clearly like upset with her, upset with the situation. And so Shantae uses this opportunity to, quote, fuck him up, and accidentally, it's not an accident, drops a condom. So at this point, Keith is convinced that Shantae is planning on hooking up with Calvin. So Shantae is walking out with Calvin, and Keith stops her. And this is like the first time that we see Shantae address the initial situation with him going out with his coworker. And I mean address it in a way that isn't understanding and nonchalant, because she hasn't really expressed to Keith that she was bothered at all. So she says something like, if you cared about me, you wouldn't have been out dancing with other women. And I wish that Keith would have used this opportunity to circle back and readdress the conversation, because that's really what it's about. Her feeling insecure in their relationship because he, you know, lied about having to work late and was out with another woman. And I totally get that it was up to Shantae to address that the first time when they were having the dinner to specifically discuss that topic. However, I do think that if Keith was putting in the additional effort to literally drag her away from Calvin and be like, hey, I don't want you going with him, he might as well have readdressed the conversation then, and maybe just reassured her like, look, I know that that was a shitty situation, but know that I love you and know that I want to be with you. Really, I think that's the purpose of the whole 10-day program, because look at all of this validation that Shantae is getting. Like, he's blowing her phone up, he's calling, he's showing that he gives a fuck. And I think that that should have been the main focus when they initially had that conversation. Like, he apologizes and admits that he's wrong. But me personally, I would want some more reassurance that it literally was nothing and that we're locked in, because that would literally confuse the shit out of me. But like I said, yeah, I wish that Keith would have rehashed that conversation now that Shantae has shown like an ounce of vulnerability regarding everything that has transpired. But instead, Keith threatens Shantae and says if she leaves with Calvin, that Keith is going to leave with Connie and go home with Connie. And I'm like, no, two wrongs don't make a right. That wouldn't have been any incentive for me at all. But like I said, it's all a part of the 10-day program, which is completely unhinged. And obviously, Shantae does not sleep with Calvin. She goes home fully with the expectation that Keith is going to be there waiting for her with flowers. She gets there, she gets to her house, crickets, silence. The house is empty. There's nobody there. So Shantae is at her favorite spot. She's having a drink and she's having some self-reflection, and it's some real good character development here. And she comes to the realization that when it comes to love, there are no rules. And it just so happens that Keith is also there across the vacant dance floor. Shantae walks over to him. They make up and they dance to Love Will Be Waiting at Home, which will be played at my hypothetical wedding. It was a very sweet scene, a very sweet ending. They both put their pride to the side, lay it all out there, and they make up. I have to say, I really love the lesson of the movie, and I think it's relevant to today in how people are dating in today's society. Love can be a scary thing because it requires vulnerability, it requires trust, and there's really no room for pride. If we look at Keith and Shantae, by Keith lying to Shantae, he kind of put her in a vulnerable state, which obviously she didn't like. Nobody likes being in a position where they feel like their trust has been broken or they feel betrayed. And instead of responding in a way that put her in a vulnerable position, her response was to punish him to ensure that he never did that shit again. And you know what? Say what you want about the 10-day program, but I guarantee you he ain't gonna do that shit again. Because that was so much. That was a lot to be going back and forth like that for 10 days. I would have checked out after probably like 4 days. I feel like at the fourth day I'd be like, I can't do this anymore. What's happening? Now during these 10 days, Keith is now in a vulnerable state, which of course he doesn't want to be in that vulnerable state. And he takes Tony's advice because both Shantae and Keith are being prideful and they're not really being vulnerable with each other. They end up hurting each other instead. And Shantae's 10-day program kind of makes me think of like you see like the social media dating coaches, kind of makes me think of that, where it's like, fellas, if she's not putting out by the third date, make her pay. Ladies, if he doesn't respond within 12 hours, don't respond for 3 to 5 business days. And it's like shit like that. I understand nobody wants to be vulnerable, but I just kind of don't I kind of just don't want to have to manipulate anybody into caring about me and doing the right thing. You know what I mean? And that's such a shitty thing to have to do. I know like it feels easier sometimes being guarded, but I feel like you're not gonna find anything worthwhile if you do that shit. I don't know. And also, I just don't want to have to do all of that shit. That's a lot. Fuck. I want to double text and it be okay. And it's not like, oh, bitch, you double texted. Now he's gonna disrespect you. Like, huh? But that's just me. And that's all that I have for you today. I hope you have a wonderful Valentine's Day. I hope you get all the chocolates. I hope you get all the loves. I hope you get all the admirers and other heart-shaped things. Okay, bye.